The transfer portal has truly taken over college football, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about the top 25 transfer quarterbacks for the 2024 season. Not much of an intro is needed, as we're going to go through each of the top 25 players, talk about who they are, how good they were, where they were ranked, and where they are headed. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the top 25 transfer quarterbacks for the 2024 college football season. Okay, so coming in at 25, we have DeMond Williams Jr. Coming out of Basha High School in Chandler, Arizona, Williams threw for 3,200 yards with 34 touchdowns and only had 3 interceptions. He was listed as a 4-star recruit and a top 250 player in the class of 2024 and originally decided to sign with Arizona. After he was committed and signed to be with the Wildcats, he decided to follow Jedd Fisch from Arizona to Washington, and he will be a backup this upcoming season. Honestly, I kind of don't like how these players are listed in the transfer portal, as in my opinion, they flipped their commitment more than they did transfer, but DeMond Williams comes in at number 25. At number 24, we have DeMarcus Davis. He was originally a 4-star recruit, and while he was at Etiwanda High School, he put up big numbers. During his senior year, he threw for 2,400 yards with 24 touchdowns, completed 69% of his passes, and also ran for 7 more scores on the ground. After originally planning to commit to Washington, he would decide to enter the transfer portal after Kalen DeBoer left, and decided to settle on UCLA. Ethan Garbers will likely be the starting quarterback, so he'll get a chance to sit on the bench and redshirt and get better for the future. At number 3, we have a guy who is really underrated, and that is Jaden Maiava. After originally coming out of Hawaii, Maiava would transfer to Liberty High School in Nevada and would eventually blow up and get multiple Power 5 offers. He really fell in love with the UNLV staff though and decided to commit there. And then as a redshirt freshman in 2023, he led UNLV to their most wins since 1984, and he threw for 3,000 yards with 17 touchdowns and 10 picks. He's also a decent player on the ground and decided to enter the transfer portal, where he would originally go to Georgia, and he is now headed to USC. He's currently competing with Miller Moss, and some people were saying he looks a lot like Caleb Williams, but it does look like Moss is in the driver's seat to win the job, is just going to be a backup for now. But maybe he'll start if Moss struggles or an injury happens. At number 22, we have another guy who's going to start for a Power 5 program, and that is Curtis Rourke. After originally being from the country of Canada, Curtis Rourke would follow his brother to Ohio, where he has been starting games ever since the 2020 season. This past year, he made 11 starts for the Bobcats, throwing for 2,200 yards and 11 passing touchdowns. He also ran for 4 more scores on the ground, and he is the second leading passer in Ohio football history. He'll head over to Curt Cignetti in Indiana, and he'll get a chance to start right away, and he has a ton of experience, and in my eyes is a guy to watch out for. At number 21, we have Nate Johnson. After originally being a 4-star recruit from Clovis High School in California, Nate Johnson would decide to commit to play for Utah. After Cam Rising had his bizarre injury situation, Johnson would get an opportunity to play last year against Florida and would split time. In total, he ended up throwing for 499 yards with 3 total touchdowns and then 4 more scores on the ground. By no means was he a superstar, but Nate Johnson has a good amount of potential and can both use his arms and legs. He decided to transfer over to Vanderbilt, where he thought he'd be guaranteed the starting job, but they also brought in Diego Pavia from New Mexico State, and those two are battling it out for the starting gig. Ultimately, I think Pavia is better, but Johnson also has a lot of potential and could be the starter for them. At number 20, we have a very familiar name, and that is Grayson McCall. After originally being a 3-star recruit from Porter Ridge High School in North Carolina, Grayson McCall would come to Coastal Carolina under Jamie Chadwell and would blow up as a freshman, helping the Chanticleers have a historic year. In 2020, he threw for 2,500 yards and 26 touchdowns, and he's put up a very similar stat line the last 3 years for them. In 2021, he threw for 2,800 yards and 27 scores, then it was 2,724 scores in 2022, and then this past year, things would dip off for multiple reasons. 1, I think he regressed a little bit, and 2, he suffered a terrible injury, so he only finished with 2,000 yards and 10 scores. He also had a career-high 6 picks, and McCall will use his last year of eligibility to go to NC State. The Wolfpack are loading up for an ACC title run, and Grayson McCall has had plenty of time to learn and mature, and he's a guy who at one point was supposed to be in the NFL, so we'll see if he can put it all together for his final year of eligibility, and I'm actually excited to watch this. At number 19, we have a guy that you guys need to know about, and that is Max Brosmer. After not even being ranked in his recruiting class, Max Brosmer went over to New Hampshire after coming out of Roswell, Georgia. These past couple years have been great for him, as he spent 5 years at New Hampshire playing in 36 career games. In total, he passed for 8,700 yards and 70 touchdowns, and also had 10 more scores on the ground. He led the FCS in passing yards, was an All-American, and decided to enter the transfer portal, where he will now go to Minnesota. It looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback for PJ Fleck, and Brosmer's a guy who pretty much no one knows about, but I think you will know about him by midway through the year. Will he be a superstar? Probably not. Will he be a solid starter? I think so. I'm kind of excited to watch him. At number 18, we have Brendan Sorsby. Coming out of Texas, Sorsby was a 3-star recruit and was never really supposed to do much. He got a late offer to go to Indiana, and that is exactly what he would do. After redshirting as a freshman in 2022, Sorsby would take over and start 7 games by the end of the 2023 season. He became the only quarterback since 1996 with multiple 60-yard touchdown passes and showed significant flash by the end of the season. After it was over, he decided to enter the transfer portal, where he will now head to Cincinnati. He'll replace starter Emory Jones Jr., and Sorsby's a guy who can both run and pass and is also super tough, so I see him being an average starter for the Bearcats this fall. At number 17, we have Tyler Van Dyke. Coming out of Suffolk Academy in Connecticut, Van Dyke was a 4-star recruit out of a state that's not known for producing many big-time quarterbacks. He'd go to Miami and ended up sitting on the bench, but by the end of the 2021 season, Van Dyke exploded with nearly 3,000 yards and 25 touchdowns. Going into 2022, he was seen as a Heisman contender and a potential top 10 draft pick, but everything fell apart. He only threw for 1,800 yards with 10 touchdowns, and luckily he'd get one more chance and would improve in 2023, throwing for 2,700 yards and 19 scores. He did have a high of 12 picks, but now he'll transfer over to Wisconsin, where he will likely be the starter for Luke Fickell, and hopefully save his career that started out strong but has been somewhat of a disappointment. At number 16, we have Will Rogers. Coming out of Brandon High School in Mississippi, Will Rogers was a 3-star recruit and decided to sign with Mike Leach in Mississippi State. He started towards the end of the 2020 season, throwing for nearly 2,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. He had his breakout season in 2021, throwing for nearly 5,000 yards and 36 scores, and put himself on the NFL draft radar. As a junior in 2022, he threw for 3,900 yards and 35 scores, but decided to come back for one more season. Ultimately, that wouldn't be a great idea, as he only threw for 1,600 yards and 12 scores, and now has decided to transfer over to Washington, where he will take over for Michael Penix Jr. His head coach will be Jedd Fisch, and this is an interesting fit. I think he could be really solid, or he'll be a bust. I think it'll be pretty black and white with him. At number 15, we have a former 5-star quarterback in Malachi Nelson. Just 2 years ago, he was pronounced the savior of USC football, but now as we flash forward to 2024, he'll be starting for a Group of 5 program. After throwing for nearly 3,000 yards and 35 touchdowns at Los Alamitos High School, he signed on with USC, but after just 1 year in the Trojan system, he entered the portal and will now be going to Boise State. He'll be a guy who will start pretty much instantaneously for the Broncos and could have an opportunity to become one of the better quarterbacks they've had in quite some time. I don't know why he left USC so early or why he couldn't find a Power 5 gig. Either way, there's going to be a lot of attention on Malachi Nelson this fall. At number 14, we have Kyle McCord. He ended up being Marvin Harrison Jr.'s teammate in high school, and after a successful career at St. Joe's, he decided to go to Ohio State. He would redshirt his first year and had a minimal impact in 2022 before he'd take over as a starter in 2023. He beat out Devin Brown for the job and threw for 3,170 yards with 24 touchdowns and 6 picks. He did kind of underperform in their big games and was most known for his interception against Michigan. A lot of people blame McCord for Ohio State's struggles last year, but now he'll get a fresh start with Fran Brown at Syracuse, where he's already going to be the starting quarterback and will hopefully be able to save his career there and change the narrative around his name. At number 13, we have DJ Uiagalelei. After becoming a 5-star recruit from St. John Bosco, DJ Uiagalelei and Bryce Young were seen as the next big thing and surefire top 5 prospects. DJ ended up starting out at Clemson and had flash in 2020, and then would take over in both 2021 and 2022, throwing for a combined 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. Ultimately, he was a little bit disappointing in both of those years, and he decided to move on from Clemson and go to Oregon State, where this past year he threw for 2,600 yards and 21 touchdowns. He would save his career at the Beavers and is now transferred to Florida State, where he will take over for Jordan Travis. A lot of people have high expectations for him this year, but ultimately I think he'll just be a little bit above average. DJ has all the potential in the world, but it seems like something is a little bit off, and hopefully he'll be able to save his career this year with the Noles. At number 12, we have Dillon Gabriel. I'm not sure why he's so low on this list, but coming out of Hawaii, Dillon Gabriel was a 3-star recruit and ended up going to UCF. After 3 successful years with the Knights, he decided to transfer to Oklahoma, where over the past 2 years he's been really good. He threw for 3,100 yards and 25 touchdowns in 2022, and then in 2023 he built upon that with 3,600 yards and 30 touchdowns. Because he had an extra year of eligibility, he decided to skip the NFL draft, and he will now start for Oregon, where he will take over for Bo Nix. While some people are mixed on Gabriel, I think he'll be pretty solid. I don't know if he'll win a national championship there or win the Heisman, but he should be pretty good for the Ducks and continue on with what Coach Dan Lanning is building. At number 11, we have one of the most underrated and exciting quarterback transfers, and that is Daquan Finn. After becoming a 3-star recruit from Martin Luther King High School, he was the quarterback before Dante Moore and ended up playing for Toledo. He didn't do much in 2019, but would eventually take over as a starter in 2021. He had 18 touchdowns and 2,000 yards, and then would break out in 2022 with nearly 2,200 yards and 23 scores there. In 2023, he ended up having nearly 3,000 yards and 22 touchdowns, and led Toledo to one of their best seasons in school history. For his final year of eligibility, Finn has decided to transfer to Baylor, where he will get a chance to start right away, and hopefully go out on top and get a chance to go to the NFL. I think he's a fringe NFL player at best, but he should be an upgrade for the Bears, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm really starting to question the logic of 24/7 Sports after going through this list, as apparently Jaden Rashada is the 10th best transfer quarterback. After becoming a 4-star recruit from Pittsburgh High School, Rashada went to both Miami and Florida, but then eventually decommitted because of NIL reasons. He ended up going to his dad's alma mater in Arizona State, where in just a couple of games last year, he threw for 485 yards with 4 touchdowns and 3 picks. Apparently, Rashada was getting beat out in fall camp by Sam Leavitt, so he decided to enter the transfer portal late, and Kirby Smart got him as the 4th quarterback for the Bulldog. I don't really think there's a chance he plays this year, as at best he's 3rd string, and is more of a guy for the future, but again, he can pretty much do everything on the field, but in my opinion, he more so has a lot of potential than immediate skills that can transfer to the field. I'm not sure why he was the 10th ranked transfer quarterback, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. At number 9, we have one of the most raw quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and that is Austin Mack. After going to Folsom High School, Mack ended up spending his freshman year at Washington, where he just redshirted and was sitting behind Michael Penix Jr. At 6'6", Austin Mack has a cannon for an arm and incredible physical traits, but we'll have to wait and see if the coaching staff at Alabama can get the most out of him. Luckily, it will be Kalen DeBoer, and while some people disagree with me, I think Austin Mack should be the frontrunner to start in 2025 for the Tide, and he's someone I'm really excited to watch, and we'll get a full-length video at some point. At number 8, we have Riley Leonard. After going to Fairhope High School in Alabama, Riley Leonard was just a 3-star recruit who signed to play at Duke. After not doing much in 2021, Leonard would take over as the full-time starter in 2022, leading Duke to 9 wins in Mike Elko's first season. He passed for nearly 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, and then was off to a hot start in 2023 as he got the Blue Devils ranked, and through 5 games had 1,100 yards. Sadly, he ended up getting hurt and missed the remainder of the season, and will now transfer to Notre Dame, where he will take over for another former ACC quarterback in Sam Hartman. Leonard's a little bit more mobile than Hartman was, but I'm still kind of questioning his fit and how he will do for the Irish, but he should have a solid season. At number 7, we have Will Howard. After becoming a 3-star recruit from Downington West High School in Pennsylvania, Will Howard would go over to Kansas State, where he would become the backup to Skylar Thompson. He got an opportunity to start a couple games in 2020, throwing for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, but he struggled mightily with interceptions. In 2021, he also played the backup role, and then in 2022, he became the backup to Adrian Martinez, and then eventually took over, throwing for 1,600 yards and 19 combined touchdowns. Finally, he became a full-time starter in 2023, as he threw for 2,600 yards with 24 touchdowns, and also had 9 more scores on the ground. After entering the portal, many thought he would go to USC, but he eventually decided to go to Ohio State. Honestly, I've been questioning this fit since it happened, as I don't know if he's that much of an upgrade, but Will Howard does have experience as a dual-threat quarterback, and should hopefully be better than Kyle McCord. We'll have to wait and see though. At number 6, we have Malik Murphy. After going to Junipero Serra High School in California, Murphy had a cannon for an arm and was listed as a 5-star recruit. He would ultimately only become a top 10 quarterback in the class of 2022, and in his first year he would redshirt. Last year, he got an opportunity to play in a couple of games, throwing for 477 yards with 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. After the season was over, Quinn Ewers decided to return, and Arch Manning was there, so he transferred to Duke. Manny Diaz got a quarterback who both has a big arm, a lot of potential, and can use his legs, and he should take over as a starting quarterback right away. I have no idea how he will do, but he is a little bit unpolished and will need a lot of work. I'm not sure why he was ranked as the number 6 overall transfer quarterback, but he does have a lot of long-term potential. At number 5, we have Brock Vandegrift. After going to Prince Avenue Christian High School in Bogart, Georgia, Vandegrift became a 5-star recruit and one of the top Georgia high school football quarterbacks ever. After originally committing to Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma, he would eventually flip to Georgia, and in his last 3 years, he's done nothing but mop-up duty. He had 1 pass attempt in 2021, 2 in 2022, and then 18 in 2023, and in total, he's thrown for 2 touchdowns. Vandegrift has not made any sort of impact, and with Carson Beck coming back, he would decide to transfer, where he will now go to Mark Stoops in Kentucky. He should take over right away, and from what I've heard so far, Vandegrift has looked good in fall camp and should be a pretty solid quarterback for the Wildcats this fall. At number 4, we have Cam Ward. After originally going to Columbia High School in Texas, he was a 0-star recruit and would have to sign to go to Incarnate Word. After 2 dominant years there, he would end up going to Washington State, where over the last 2 years he's been pretty incredible. He had 3,300 yards and 23 touchdowns in 2022, and then this past year had 3,700 yards and 25 touchdowns with 8 more on the ground. Instead of going off to the NFL, he decided to go over to Miami, where he'll be the starting quarterback and will be expected to elevate the Hurricanes program. He's probably Miami's most hyped up quarterback in a long time, and hopefully he'll be able to live up to that potential and maybe become a first-round pick when it's all said and done. At number 3, we have Dante Moore. After coming out of Martin Luther King High School in Detroit, Dante Moore was an unbelievable prospect and the 4th best player in the class of 2023. After originally deciding to go to Oregon, he would flip his commitment to UCLA, where he ended up starting a couple of games. In total, he threw for 1,600 yards with 11 touchdowns, and really struggled in a lot of areas, including having 9 interceptions and only completing 53% of his passes. He decided to enter the transfer portal, and he'll now head back to Oregon, where he originally committed, and back up Dylan Gabriel for a year, before he'll probably take over in 2025. This reminds me of a Kyler Murray situation, and I think the sky is the limit for Dante Moore. Honestly, I don't understand 24/7 Sports rankings, as no offense, I think Aiden Childs is good, but he's not the number 2 overall transfer quarterback. After a late blow-up in high school, Aiden Childs signed to go to Oregon State with Jonathan Smith, and in his 1 year backing up DJ, he was pretty solid. He ended up throwing for 309 yards with 4 touchdowns, and he also had 3 more scores on the ground, but everyone's talking about his potential. He decided to follow Jonathan Smith to Michigan State, where he will likely take over as the starting quarterback and will hopefully be able to elevate the Spartans program. I recently did a video on him, and while I think he's going to be really good, I don't think he was the number 2 overall transfer quarterback. Finally, at number 1, we have the guy I disagree with most, and that is Julian Sayin. After going to Carlsbad High School in California, Julian Sayin became a 5-star recruit in the class of 2024 and decided to commit to Alabama. He was a guy who put up insane numbers and has been seen as the number 1 overall quarterback in his class for quite some time, but after he decided to sign with Bama, he would transfer to Ohio State. I guess technically he was a transfer, but it doesn't really count, and I'm not sure why he's ranked as the number 1 overall transfer, but again, what do I know? He will have a ton of potential in the future though, and could take over in 2025 for the Buckeyes. So yeah, today we talked about the top 25 transfer quarterbacks for 2024, and we used 24/7 Sports as the list. But what do you guys think? Let me know who your favorite transfer quarterback is. Is there a guy who didn't make the list who you think he'll be solid, and what topic should I cover next? Also, be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including 20 players who could break out for the 2024 season. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.